Welcome to the Fully Charged Show podcast. In this live chat at the Fully Charged live show held on the 9th of June this year, I spoke with an expert panel all about whether electric cars can compete. With the raising of popularity in Formula E and our upcoming video actually where I got to drive the first generation Formula E single-seater, and I also looked at this Pininfarina Battista, a car that's being developed, some £2 million hyper electric car developed using Formula E tech with Mahindra Racing. Is the popularity in motorsport the next area of dominance for electric vehicles? Big question. So with me on stage was Beth Lily Georgiou from the ERA Championship, Alexander Sims, the BMW Andretti driver in Formula E, and Mark Gemmell, who is the CEO, the owner, the founder of Electric GT. Come and join us, won't you? From my personal experience, I have built an electric car that competed a few years ago now, and I started building it in 2012, and 2012 seems like a really long time ago in e-motorsport. It predated Formula E, and it was difficult, actually. It was difficult convincing people that it would be competitive and worthy of column inches or watching, but I enjoyed the process of that, and I enjoy being the outcast. After 2 years of building and racing an electric dragster, I had the real hardcore petrol heads, whatever you want to call them, actually coming towards me and realizing I wasn't a black sheep and saying, I've seen the car, I've seen how fast it can go, I don't understand it. And can you show me what it is? And when you show them the guts of the car, they still go, I don't understand how that can have that much power.
Yeah.
So here we are in a world where Formula E now exists. We're going to have tin-top electric cars competing. Further down the line, we might have electric rallycross, electric off-road. So before we delve deeper into the subject, can you just briefly introduce yourselves and what your background is? Beth, you're first.
I'm Beth Lily Georgiou. I know quite a lot of people here know that I'm heavily involved in performance EVs and motorsport. I am now the Sporting Communications Director of a new championship called ERA Championship, and we are an entry-level electric racing series. So sort of a bit like Formula 4, but purely electric, with two classes, a spec class and an innovation class, where teams are doing a lot of self-development of elements of the car.
Fantastic.
Hi guys, I'm Alexander Sims, Formula E driver in the BMW Andretti team. Things have come a long way. I remember driving my EV to Alejandro Agag's office, who's the founder of Formula E, 6-7 years ago, from Wales to London, and meeting him, and he couldn't quite believe that a current racing driver was driving an EV to come and talk about being involved in the championship. It's obviously taken me a few more years than I would have liked to actually be a race driver in the championship. It's amazing to be living in a time where driving an electric vehicle and racing cars is possible to do the same thing at the same time. Wind the clock back just 5 years before Formula E was around, and it wasn't possible.
People didn't think it was ever going to become interesting or fast. I think that was always the first misconception. People thought any kind of electric motorsport was definitely going to be slower than piston motorsport.
Yep.
So it was always, and we now know that that's not necessarily the case. Thanks in many ways to the Tesla effect of insanity mode and whatever other names they're going to call it. I don't know, deranged mode. I don't know.
Probably be their
upset your grandparents mode.
As we know, right.
Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, okay, so I'm Mark Gemmell, the CEO and co-founder of Electric GT, which is a race series based initially on the Tesla Model S. They've been for a while wanting to launch. There's a small detail of having enough money to actually do so. But the important thing for us was to be able to seriously present a project to the FIA, get that approved, and essentially try to capture enough enthusiasm from people with money to make this happen. Our fundamental objective is to stop this kind of noise going on. They're about to come by again.
There is some noisy racing going on today at Silverstone.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I'm not anti-noise, but I think it would be nice to have an entire circuit of just electric activity, zero combustion, because we have to understand that this is the future. It's well worth having, and I think if we get everyone excited about it, the change will happen a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
Yeah. So can electric cars compete? I mean, you obviously are a driver, Alexander. You do compete directly.
Try to, anyway, yeah. Not been too successful this season.
Yeah, you're handy. You're handy behind the wheel, I'm sure. I went to my first Formula E race only about 3 weeks ago, believe it or not. Do you find that most of the fans of Formula E are younger?
Yeah, I mean, I've been competing in motorsports for quite a few years now, when I think about it.
You can tell us how many years.
Yeah, it's like 20 years.
20?
Mad. And so seeing the really quite stark difference between the people at Formula E races compared to other championships that I've been involved in, I think first of all that most of the people that come to Formula E races are genuinely interested in the technology, interested in the movement, I would say, as a whole, rather than just watching racing cars on circuits and the brands and things. I think Formula E has a wider message that we're all familiar with in terms of reducing energy consumption across the globe, reducing emissions in personal transportation things, but they're doing it in a cool, sexy way that's exciting, that's engaging for the members of the public.
Well, I noticed when I went, the first thing that I compared it to, because I haven't been to a few Formula One events, was the accessibility and the openness and the kind of warmth. I personally don't think there's a great deal of warmth in Formula One.
No.
I don't have any interest in Formula One. I'm just going to put that out there. I think we're in a world where I know the viewing figures of Formula One have dropped significantly in the last 2 years, because people are saying it's got a bit samey. Are we now seeing a tipping point of, unless F1 makes some radical changes, makes it cheaper, makes it more realistic, Formula E is going to win over some people?
Well,
it's certainly a lot cheaper.
I think that time is really happening, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to claim that Formula E is going to surpass Formula One and Formula One's going to die in the next 5 years. It's not. It's the cars are amazing, don't get me wrong, in Formula One. But the amount of manufacturers that are involved in Formula E, it's what every manufacturer wants to be a part of. It's promoting the right message and developing the right technology that's going to see them, they're going to see, in their road cars in the coming years. I know myself with our BMW team, the same engineers who developed the i3 and i8 powertrains have developed the Formula E powertrain, and they're using that development cycle to go back into the future electric motors and inverters and all the technology that's in an electric car to improve the road cars of the future. And those days with combustion engine cars kind of had reached a stage where the racing technology wasn't that relevant anymore to the road car technology. And so Formula E's really brought that back to the manufacturers, and that's why we've got
a lot of manufacturers involved.
Incredible
a lot
amount.
Of big brands,
and that makes it exciting. That brings money into the sport. Formula E does a good job at keeping costs relatively affordable. I think we are at a stage where Formula E is starting to create more excitement, give a better end product of racing to the fans.
Beth, we talked about affordability, because obviously being able to compete in motorsport in the first place, you need money. And there's an entry-level motorsport is not what it was. There's no such thing as properly cheap motorsport, I don't think. Tell us more about ERA.
Yeah, so actually affordability was probably number one on our list when a good few years ago now a bunch of massive EV motorsport enthusiasts got together and said we want to make something that gets young drivers and enthusiasts able to get out on track in an electric car, because obviously there are electric championships. We talked about Formula E, there's the iPace trophy, but we're talking big dollar and talented racing drivers, but there wasn't really a platform available for enthusiasts or for up-and-coming 16, 17-year-olds to really get into the electric cars at that age and get enthused by that. So for us, there was a real ballpark figure in mind that we do not want to be too expensive because we do not want to exclude these people from getting the talent out there. So ERA was designed to fund these people, and so our spec car racing series is looking to cost around £100,000 for a team to buy their car and enter for the first season, which it sounds like a lot of money maybe to some of you in the room, but if you're in motorsport, that figure is a very low cost, and hopefully that way we can nurture some talent, we can grow some talent from kids that are coming in karting, or maybe just people that really want to race electric, get them out there, and I strongly believe that electric motorsports is a great way to have road adoption. It's the fashion catwalk effect, isn't it? If people see more electric cars on the track, then they're going to want to have them at home as well.
Well, electric karting's become really, really popular, and it allows you to be able to kart in confined spaces, in warehouses without any emission problems. And I suppose it helps to convince people that there's a good, interesting throttle response, an interesting dynamic. Mark, tell us can electric cars compete? Tell me how you feel.
This is a key question for us because I think we all know that the electric car has a lot of torque and apparently a lot of performance to show, but of course when you take it to the circuit, I think some of you might have seen Tiff Needell's video when he took it around.
I know Tiff Needell.
Yeah, so you know him. He's a good lad. So he took the car around Montmello on an extremely hot day, and it didn't take long for that Tesla to hit its power limit.
Yeah.
Now, people have criticised and said, well, that's no good, you can't race that car.
Yeah.
But people fail to realise that every single vehicle has its limitations. Formula One cars even can't go round a corner at 300 kilometres an hour regardless, because the tyres are limited.
Yeah.
The whole thing about racing is you have to deal with those limitations and show your skill and ability as a team or as a driver to overcome them. I think no one here is going to claim that electric cars are perfect today.
Yeah.
And if we imagine we're like 100 years ago with combustion cars. 100 years ago, combustion cars they had a long way to go, right? What would that be, 1919? So they were,
yeah, I remember 1919.
Yeah, they were chugging out of the
pre-social media.
Right. So the thing is, there was a lot of improvement going on, and folks like Bentley brought out their fantastic cars and raced them. I don't know if people were particularly concerned about the limitations they had, but we certainly saw that in sport, those limitations were exposed, and there was an incentive to improve the cars. And that is absolutely our objective. We're not trying to say these cars are perfect, they're going to beat combustion cars from the first day, but we do want to expose those limitations and have the manufacturers get involved to improve them. And I'm actually even against the teams playing around too much with the car. I'd much prefer that the manufacturers came in and said, well, okay, it's overheating, let's put it in track mode. Yeah. And if that works, okay, well, let's see how it does against the Taycan. And, you know, that's where the fun is, because, I don't know, it's kind of cool to see single-seat prototype cars that are built by some specialist engineers down here in Banbury, but to be honest, I think I'd prefer to go to buy a car.
You like relatable stuff. I mean, who enjoys seeing motorsport vehicles that are relatable to the ones you buy in the shops, let's say? You know, you got the likes of, touring cars, that kind of thing. So you go, oh, I see, that's Vauxhall Astra, and I can buy a version of that car in the shops.
Well, it's actually, as Beth was saying, it's this halo effect that you do want a car that looks awesome on the track, it's got big wings, big wheels and such, and can perform substantially well. I mean, we actually expect that it will not be difficult to set GT-class track records with good electric cars. So you've got a situation where you could actually get young folks putting posters up on the wall of an electric car and aspiring to that.
I think there's no doubt that's happening imminently.
It's not happening today.
It's starting to happen, because I think a lot of the younger generation have less prejudice. If you take Formula One, for example, and people are moaning now and saying, oh, I miss the V10, I miss the V8 era, those eras that were regarded. younger people weren't born then. They hadn't seen that, so they have less to compare it to. So therefore, there's less prejudice of going, I kind of like that, but I prefer the old whatever it might be.
Right.
And obviously, we do have some rose-tinted glasses kicking about here and there. But, you know, people forget that the first land speed records ever set were by an electric car.
Well,
That was quite some time ago.
yeah. But Jonny, I do ask people quite often, you win the lottery, what's the first car you're going to buy? And a lot of people will say, especially lads, you know, Ferrari, Lambo, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing people saying, I'll get in line for that Rimac Concept 2 or the other Pininfarina one.
What would you buy if you won the lottery, Alexander? Come on. Have you got to say BMW?
Well, I've seen a few cameras around, so yeah.
Nothing wrong with the i8 Roadster.
There are 100%. You know, there's going to be cars in the pipeline that I know are being worked on. Obviously, can't say anything, but you know, there's cool cars coming.
Can you give us a scoop?
No, I'm not. I don't know that much, crikey. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where you can buy an electric alternative to any type of car.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a few insanely fast electric cars on the road. Some of you might have come in them today. But to see the supercar type electric car being built by multiple manufacturers will be a very, very cool day. But I'd go out and buy an i3 if I had the choice.
Do you think that we're going to see electric cars competing in the same classes as piston cars? Because I like the idea. When I competed in mine was against the existing cars. I was the special one.
Special boy.
Yeah. I was special. It made me feel special. And so are we going to see this sort of grudge match of pistons versus EV, or is it going to be like men's football, men's cricket, women's cricket, of like, you know, because let's face it, women's football is apparently more interesting than men's football at the moment. So,
yeah.
But you can't put them together. I don't know why. It's a different subject.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
I think putting my sporting head on rather than my comms head on, it's really boring to bring up, but the safety side of things is in development for electric cars, and if we're talking about track racing, a lot of tracks are not prepared or are only just looking at being prepared to take fully electric track racing. If you then add in dual classes to the mix on track racing, then you've got to train a lot of marshals to be able to identify which cars are petrol, which cars are electric, and which fire extinguishers to use. And I know that's maybe not the nicest topic to talk about, but I think that's the big thing holding it back right now, and there's a lot of regulation in place to make sure that the moment that doesn't happen just because of safety side of things.
Yeah.
But saying that, I work heavily on the electric safety side of motorsport, and there's less things to worry about than people think. There's a lot of fear-mongering in the world of EVs, whether it's on track or on the road. Yeah. And it's actually quite simple, but of course if you've got mixed vehicles on track, there's always the risk that in an incident where you've got to act in under a few seconds, that you might make the wrong call and think that the car is combustion or think that it's electric. Yeah. So that's a bit of a boring answer for you, but
it's a very good consideration to make, though, isn't it? Because obviously, when you're competing in Formula E, they know it's all electric. They have a protocol. Don't spray water on it, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not a great idea.
No, it's a great point. I see it a little bit more from the sporting aspect.
Right.
And, you know, the cars racing here today, for example, they're all multiple brands of cars, some naturally aspirated, some turbos, and they have this sort of balancing, they call it balance of performance in endurance racing. And so in my mind, to throw an electric car into the mix and try and get them to balance the cars, I think it would be an extremely difficult challenge.
So it's easier to grow them as a separate category?
I would imagine so, yes, to start with. Yeah. And I mean, the types of racing where you have multiple manufacturers are normally the sort of endurance racing, longer races. I mean, you do have some sprint racing, but...
Hill climbs, I mean, things like hill climbs.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Scenarios like that, 100%.
That's all right.
They can dominate.
There's a chance for electric cars to be involved and, as you say, dominate for the type of racing that it is. But I see electric cars, they have so much potential that you might as well just show them off for what they can do and not hold them back by trying to make them as relatively bad as internal combustion engine cars. You
Or
know,
relatively
let
bad.
them go. Just go for it, guys. Go
Relatively
fast.
bad.
No, and you've got another advantage. A really good thing about electric cars is a lot of racing circuits are really struggle because of noise limitations. Even Silverstone, which is an iconic GP circuit, is told a lot of the time that they can't run because there's a neighbouring village nearby, and the villagers hate the sound of race cars, even though they chose to live near Silverstone. But that's the way it is in the world. And maybe in the UK we're a little bit more motorsport friendly, but there's a lot of tracks in Europe that are absolutely crippled by noise restraints. And basically, if you've got an EV, you can run all the time, and you're never going to get noise complaints. You can run at night if you've got good lighting. You can run at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you'll never get complaints. So it might actually save tracks that are dying because of it.
It's a very valid point. When I was competing, there was a rule in the pits of no race cars to be started after 9 p.m. because of the local village.
Yep.
Who lives in a village next to a historic racetrack and says they hate noise? What's that all about? It's been here for like 100 years.
I can assure you,
you,
there's plenty.
You buy a house
people
next to
that do.
Stansted and then you moan about an aeroplane going by. Anyway.
Well, they complain about that too.
But anyway, yeah, there was a curfew, and when I was racing, we had a bit of an issue, and we were trying to resolve this issue, and at about 10:30 at night, we thought we fixed it, so I switched the car on and drove it around in a little circle to prove that it was working, and they tried to ban me from the competition because I'd started my race car after 9 p.m, and I was like, you do understand it's because of noise? It doesn't make a noise. You didn't know I'd started it up until I crept it around. And they were like, no, but the rules are the rules. It's like, this makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's not even an argument.
Yeah.
But like you say, you can then change when you do stuff like that.
Yeah. I was going to say that about mixing combustion with electric. Some Australians have been in touch, and they did want us to pitch our Teslas against V8s. You know,
V8 supercars, whatever it's called,
and we're game, you know, and it's not a case of we're going to do it if we think we're going to win. I think it's just being a sport and saying, well, let's have a go, and if we don't do it, maybe next year we will.
Yes.
So I think that's cool. But I mean, if I would ask the public, I mean, are you interested in seeing these
Pistons versus Volts
a mixed
on
race?
track?
Is there some? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun.
I mean, look, we might get our asses handed to us initially. But we know where it's all going to end.
I've had mine handed to me a few times.
Absolutely. But one day, we're just going to leave them in the dust, and the debate will be over. And I think we shouldn't shy away from such challenges. Personally, I would prefer there not to be any fossil fuel being burnt in the circuit when we're there, because you want to get this kind of new age vibe. But if that would achieve the purpose of accelerating the change to clean energy and sustainable transport, then hey.
What about the halo brands like Ferrari and McLaren and people like that who their fastest cars, their most expensive fastest cars are hybrid now? You know, when the P1 McLaren came out and the LaFerrari and the Porsche 918 Spider, they were all the fastest, most expensive supercars, hypercars. They were all plug-in hybrid. One of them wasn't plug-in. I think
they're not. Yeah.
Self-charging.
Self-charging.
Nicely said.
If Robert's in the room, he'll have something to say about that. But so I think those sorts of cars go a long way, and Ferrari's just brought out the next version of that car. We're now going to see the fastest sort of upper-end competition supercar, hypercars as being plug-ins of some sort, which will then, and then you've got the Rimacs, and then you've got the Pininfarina Battista. So this makes it sexier and more appealing and taken more seriously, doesn't it? It's not going to go backwards. Ferrari are not going to then just go, oh, let's just go back to natural aspirated V12.
Certainly, but we do have to push to make this happen quicker. There's a degree of reticence to change.
Yeah.
One can understand it, but we're really not in a position where we can allow an extra year or two to go by.
Yeah.
You know, we really do have to sense that urgency and take the challenge very seriously to push harder and harder for the change.
Yeah.
Right, so jolly good that I was a little bit critical about your video actually about the i8 because I was saying.
Go ahead.
Oh dear.
Yeah, go on. Here we go. Gloves off. Right. So I mean, they've spent $2 billion on making a combustion car when you could have spent that on a pure electric, and it's a bit frustrating, Johnny.
Yeah, and a lot of people have said, why isn't it full EV?
Yeah.
And I do understand that. I mean, that's a question for BMW.
Come on.
Maybe not you, Alexander.
Yeah, I can see these things because I'm not.
But you know what? The bottom line is the next gen of i8 will almost certainly be pure EV. Look at the way the company's investing money in.
It better be.
But if you think that the way manufacturers work 3 or 4 years ahead of themselves, don't they? So what they're working on today comes out in 2023, 2024. The i8 was probably penned and signed off. That particular version that I drove fairly recently, was probably built 3 years ago. Yeah? 3 years ago,
No,
there weren't the car. You're
I'm
not buying it?
convinced. 3 years ago,
Shall
come
I
on. We all had our Roadsters when? Like 2010, 2011?
2010?
What, the Tesla Roadster?
Yeah, there's a Roadster Owners Club here.
Really?
It's a little side.
Are they classed as classics now?
I'm afraid not yet, or it'd be
Would
worth
you
more
class
money.
the Tesla Roadster as a classic
Waiting
now?
for the day.
Yeah, waiting for that
Classic.
day, yeah.
I would. I mean, in a good way. There was one at my. There's a guy ferrying people to and from the circuit. Oh, there you are. Lovely guy.
Well, to be fair, parts of the interior probably are about 20 years old, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
True.
Bits of Lotus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and the T0, when was that? The core car was built 2001?
Yeah.
Yeah? The one that Ellen saw and said, I could make that production car.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions. I've got a microphone that I can throw at people, and they can ask questions. And
just thinking with motorsport, what will need to be done? Obviously, Formula E, there's got something in place, but what needs to be done with regards to infrastructure and charging for EVs racing at circuits like Silverstone?
Well,
I can answer
I'm
it,
sure
but-
you've
Yeah.
dealt with the
I'm welcome.
infrastructure side of
I'm
things.
sure you've all got a good answer for that.
Yeah. So, but in our case, 20 cars, each charging, let's say, 3 times during the day, because we've got training in the morning and then qualifying and then 2 races. So you need all in about 6 megawatt hours of energy. When we designed this race series, say 3 and a bit years ago, that was a tall order for a static battery, a grid level battery. I can tell you it's absolutely off the shelf today. And to charge that battery, our estimates are 3,000 square meters of solar panels. We have a sponsor from Switzerland who will provide those solar panels set up in an afternoon.
In an afternoon?
In an afternoon. They come ready, set on this is a really cool company. They said it's kind of daft to build a house and then build another roof on top of that roof that you've just paid for. So let's just build a roof straight off out of solar panels. And so they put them into these 10 meter by 2 meter sections in the factory. It's kind of like these Huff homes. They build it in the factory and then they bring it along.
Yeah.
And so you've got your lightweight structure. They come along with a truck, bum, bum, bum. In an afternoon, your roof's up, charging your batteries and running and keeping your house warm and dry. So they can come along to a circuit and do the same thing for us. So that's what we need, 6 megawatt hours and those solar panels for about 3 days. They're also quite good at keeping the rain and sun off.
I was going to say, good carport, good pit garage, potentially.
I mean, you need to cover people up. It does rain occasionally here. Yeah? Right.
It does, sometimes it does rain.
So that's it. That's my answer, okay?
Fact.
Well, I see it being kind of, there's 2 ways of going about it, and it depends on the circuit. But for us, quite a lot of the circuits that we've been looking at are actually saying we want to be electric car ready, and they're already seeing it as being something that they want to invest in. So that's great, because that means the circuit is saying, look, we're ready to put down money, and as Mark said, the technology's there. It just needs to be put in place. With charging up the cars, you just need to be a little bit creative. You don't want race 1 and race 2 directly after each other, because you have to allow that charging time for the grid.
Yeah.
But there are other circuits that are maybe not ready for there, and there's actually plenty of solutions now where you can bring charging to the market. And I'm not talking about diesel generators, I'm talking about like energy storage. So you bring big batteries to track, and that's an alternative way of doing it. So it's not really something that's a problem or a barrier now for electric motorsport, and it just depends how much a track is gearing up really as to which option is most appropriate.
Absolutely.
Just going back to the mixed ICE and EV motorsport, do you think that there's any potential to widen the audience for EV and stop preaching to the converted, in the sense that if you had the 2 on the track at the same time, accepting the limitations of marshalling and whatever else, that I bumped into somebody downstairs earlier on, and they didn't know that the Jaguar was a Formula E car. They thought it was a Formula 1 car. So I just
Seriously?
wonder... You seriously?
Okay.
So, What do you think? Do you think you can widen the audience for EV and accelerate that change through to EV?
I mean, I see Alexander's point as being very valid. Of like, if you're trying to push the upper levels of the performance, to segregate is probably the quickest way of doing it. But maybe you could do sort of exhibition races where you bring them together. So it's not necessarily for a firm championship, but it's actually just to say, look, electric cars will be better in certain instances on certain tracks. Pistons will be better in certain instances. And it builds that kind of grudge match, which I personally like because I like to annoy people, really. And that's why I built my race car in the first place, just to agitate people. And it worked.
But what you did also was show that electric vehicle could compete.
We did.
And that message isn't fully out there yet, I think.
No.
It definitely isn't.
No, it's definitely
not at all. I know
No.
many people who don't even know Formula E exists.
Which is quite scary.
It is, but there's
and
a big world here, you know.
People don't know that the world record for acceleration 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, or 60 miles an hour, is actually held by an electric race car built by university students from ETH Zurich. So you can watch it on YouTube. But nobody knows because, for a start, it was built by students, and people don't really pay that much attention to
They don't take it seriously.
Yeah, but that is, and it did 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 1.51 seconds, which is, it's like the most underwhelming video you've ever seen because it's there,
Yeah.
it's gone, but people just don't know.
Well, I guess actually Formula Student is one scenario which has been open, and already electric vehicles have surpassed the capabilities of ICE vehicles because of that open rule book. I think the difficulty really is that electric vehicles and combustion vehicles have strengths in very different areas. And to create a rule book which allows both of them to use their benefits in the same format of racing would be open to so many competitors feeling that they're being hard done by because one's got more advantage in a certain area, and it's so many difficulties in the fine details. I think the idea is lovely, but practically making it happen and getting people to buy into that, difficult.
Yeah, I confess this is one of the frustrating things about motorsport, is that it's quite controlled, and there's a bit of fear of mixing categories.
Cross-pollination.
Yeah, I was remembering, some of our guys in the team are from the rally world, and we were recalling the 80s when four-wheel drive came in, and you had the rear-wheel drive Escorts, competing with the Audis. And nowadays that would be an absolute insane thing to do, but at the time we thought, well, let's see if the four-wheel drive is better than the two-wheel drive, and there were conditions where the rear-wheel drive was
absolutely, and it was seen as very experimental.
Yeah,
and
then it became fun to watch.
Then it became the only
highly
way
entertaining, and I'm afraid sometimes if all the cars are the same, we're seeing the drivers are shining, but it's a bit of a laugh if we have a mix, and I'd like it to be more of a fun event.
I don't know anything particularly about Formula One, but why would manufacturers continue to invest substantial amounts of money into Formula One? I can understand historically that that's filtered down into mass market, but if the mass market's going to be electric, what is their objective then to continue investing in Formula One?
Oh my gosh, right, who's going to answer this? I've got my own opinions, I probably shouldn't say anything.
You put your foot in someone's mouth,
I mean, the way I see it is that Formula One does have a fantastic marketing reach. It's a very high-end sport, pretty exclusive, that's got a global reach. And so I guess that's really the thing that it's hanging on to, and providing what they claim to be a show, which is often a procession.
You're so diplomatic. So diplomatic.
I think, as you can see, over the last 10, 20 years, the landscape of Formula One has changed significantly from having multiple manufacturers involved to now a handful. And there are a few privateer teams in Formula One that are doing a great job, and they've got fantastic, clever people and everything. I don't want to bash Formula One for the sake of it. It's a cool sport, but I think that time is here and now. It's changing, that you see manufacturers now flocking to Formula E. We've got more manufacturers coming next year. It's the place to be, and it's the place that they're interested in, that they see is going to go places in the future.
Yeah, I think Formula One is, I think, is is a party which a lot of people feel that they can't miss out on because it will look bad on their brand if they don't turn up at that party.
Yeah.
I think it's also a crippling waste of money because I think it's got to the point where it just should be capped, because ultimately, if it's not an interesting sport to watch, what's it for?
Well, there's one positive story I've heard from Formula One recently. Is I was at Williams Advanced Engineering, and they had a fridge in there that's apparently 30% more efficient than normal fridges.
Did you say fridge?
Yeah, I'm here talking about fridges, but on the sustainability front, these fridges were 30% more efficient, which meant that there was a lot less environmental impact in every supermarket that was buying their fridges. And apparently those fridges were designed based on the aero techniques that they'd got out of Formula One. So there's one positive story out of Formula One.
There you go.
I was going to say it's something to do with like an aerofoil.
Yeah, it's aerofoil.
Yeah. So
But I didn't come here to be a Formula One advocate. That's just it was just at least put a positive spin on something.
One last question.
I just wanted to add to the conversation that let's not forget that the current record at Pikes Peak was set by an EV.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that we need to create new challenges for both ICE engines and electric vehicles. I think that with existing challenges, we just need to be careful not to exclude electric vehicles. And I think that alone will already disrupt the state that they're in right now. Like a lot of people still think that obviously electric vehicles can't compete, and those events like Pikes Peak can show that they actually can.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And again, when that Volkswagen IDR conquered Pikes Peak, the amount of time quicker than any piston car, and it proved that in that environment it was king.
Totally.
Being able to drive that huge elevation without air pressure being a problem, it was stunning. And it's just gone to the Nürburgring and smashed a record for EVs, getting very, very much closer to pistons. So these are old, historic challenges which are there to be reset, I suppose. So absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's all the time we've got. It's not a lot of time for us to cover such a big subject. But guys, thank you very much for doing this. Please give them a round of applause. To get some more information about this topic or anything else fully charged related, why not head over using your mouse or your finger on a keypad or something to our amazing glossy new website. It's called fullycharged.show. Really, that's simple. www.fullycharged.show. And have a gander around that and have a look at our fabulous A to Z guide, which is on there. Also, and I'm going to whisper this, we've got a new e-shop full of merch. So have a look at that, because it might sell out really quickly, I don't know. But I don't want to tell everyone, so keep it on the down low, just between us. Yeah? And also, I do want to save the best until last, and that is to give a huge thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. Without you guys, without your help and your donations on a monthly basis, we simply wouldn't be able to keep up making Fully Charged in both podcast form and video form. So thank you so much. If you would like to help us and be part of this thing going forward, as they say in business, maybe consider become a Patreon. The links are in the show notes. If you have no idea what Patreon means, have a look there. You can be a subscriber from as little as $2 a month, I think. If you have been, thank you very much for listening. Listening, it's the future. Yes. Fully Charged, coming in your ears. Join us. Why don't you? Pull up a chair. Or just carry on walking or driving or whatever you're doing. No commitment. You don't have to sit down. It's your call.